The war between humans and the had turned whole planets into silent graveyards. 5 endless years had passed, and the hatred between the two species had only grown stronger. Humans called the monsters tall, sharp-armored beings with glowing eyes and emotions hidden behind stone-like skin. They in return called humans destroyers, short-lived creatures who burned everything they touched. But among no one hated humans more than Princess Lyra, daughter of the war leader. Her hatred was not just taught by her people, it was born from loss. She had lost her brother in a human ambush, and the memory of his broken body still lived heavy in her heart. From that day, every human face reminded her of grief. On the other side of the war, Hale, a young human scout, had learned to stay away from territory. But fate never listened to warnings. When his small transport ship malfunctioned and crashed deep inside enemy land, he opened his eyes expecting death. Smoke rose from the broken metal around him, and the smell of burning wires mixed with the scent of damp alien soil. He could barely stand. Pain shot through his leg, and his vision spun. He tried to move, but the world tilted and swallowed him whole. When he awoke again, the world was quiet, too quiet. He felt cold metal touching his wrists. Chains. His eyes blinked until the world became clear. He was inside a cave lit by faint blue crystals, and standing before him was the last person any human would want to see. Princess Lyra. Tall, fierce, her crystal-armored skin glowing faintly in the cave light. Her eyes, bright silver like polished steel, stared at him with pure disgust. The air between them felt sharp. "You are human," she said, her voice low, filled with bitterness. "Swallowed, yes, and I am unarmed." Lyra stepped closer, her armored boots echoing on the stone floor. Even injured, could see her strength, her posture, her focus, her confidence. She was a warrior raised in fire, and he was a broken human tied to a stone pillar. She had no reason to spare him, no reason at all. "You expect mercy?" she asked coldly. "From me?" "No," whispered, "only honesty." She blinked, surprised by his answer. Most humans cried or begged at this moment. He didn't. He just looked at her, quietly accepting whatever she would decide. Somehow that bothered her more than fear would have. She paced around him, studying him like a strange creature. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to kill him quickly and satisfy the anger burning inside her. But the more she looked at him, the more something strange stirred inside her chest. Something she had not felt in years. Confusion. "Why were you here?" she demanded. "Why fly over land?" "My ship malfunctioned," he said. "I didn't come by choice." Humans always have excuses. Did not argue, he simply lowered his eyes and breathed slowly. His calmness irritated her. She wanted him to shout back, to deny, to show the arrogance humans were known for. Instead, he looked tired, worn, as if he too carried invisible wounds. Lyra stopped packing and stared at him. "Do you fear me?" she asked. "Do you want me to?" he replied softly. Her breath caught for a moment, not because of his words, but because of how he said them. There was no challenge, no mockery, no fear, just curiosity, as if he was seeing her not as a monster, but as a person. A dangerous feeling. She turned away quickly, trying to hide the slight tremble in her fingers. No human should affect her like this. No human should make her heart feel confused. She hated humans. She always had. She told herself that again and again, but the words felt weaker now. When she faced him again, something in her expression had changed. The hatred was still there, but it was no longer the only thing in her eyes. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. "Oh," he said. His voice was gentle, almost warm. And for a brief moment, a moment she tried to ignore, her heart softened, just a little, like a crack forming in old stone. She didn't understand it, she didn't like it, but she couldn't deny it. Their story began not with love or trust, but with confusion. Two enemies trapped in the same moment, unsure why fate had brought them together. And as she looked at again, Lyra felt something she never expected. Uncertainty. And a strange, quiet pull she could not explain. The cave smelled damp and cold, a sharp contrast to the burning tension between them. His wrists ached where the chains dug into his skin, but he stayed still, trying not to make her angrier. Princess Lyra circled him like a predator, her silver eyes sharp, studying every movement, every breath. The had trained her to see weakness, and she could sense it in him, but it was not fear. There was something else, something quiet, something human. "You are lucky I am curious," she said finally, stopping close to him. The tips of her fingers brushed the air near his face, close enough to feel a faint warmth but not touching. "Many humans die before I even speak to them." "I am not like others," said calmly. "I do not fight without reason." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but she forced it away. "You speak as if humans have honor. How can I believe that after all the death your kind has caused?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I know humans have caused pain. I have seen it and I have lived it, but not all humans are the same. I am not the same, and I never wanted to fight your people." Her chest rose and fell quickly. She hated that she was listening. She hated that he sounded honest. But there was a stubborn corner of her mind buried deep that could not ignore it. His words were simple, yet heavy, carrying truth she did not expect. "You speak easily, human," she said softly. "Do you understand what it means to fight for your life every day, to carry the deaths of your people on your shoulders?" "Yes," he said, "I do. My brother died in the first year of the war. I still carry it. And I imagine you carry your brother's death too." His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Maybe that is why we can understand each other." The words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. Lyra stiffened, turning her gaze toward the cave wall, pretending to study the crystals. Her heart beat too fast. She had trained herself to block feelings, to burn hate like fire. But here it was, whispering softly, questioning everything she had believed for years. "You are human," she said, her voice colder now, as if trying to mask the stirrings inside her. "And yet you speak as if you could understand me. How is that possible?" "Because pain is universal," replied gently. "Loss is universal. We do not have to be enemies to feel it." For the first time, Lyra felt the weight of the war not just as a soldier, but as a grieving sister. She remembered her brother's laughter, the way he had run toward danger without fear, and the way humans had taken him from her. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to remind herself that this human before her was a threat. But instead, she found herself listening, really listening. She sat down on a jagged rock, letting her armor clink softly, the first sign of vulnerability she had shown since the war began. Watched her carefully, not moving too fast, not saying too much. He understood that silence could speak louder than words. Minutes passed. Slowly they shared stories, her carefully, cautiously, and him with honesty. Spoke of his home, the green forests of Earth, the oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see, the quiet moments before the war began. Lyra listened, her silver eyes softening, a spark of curiosity shining through. She had never imagined a human could care for anything beyond conquest and survival, and yet here he was, speaking of beauty, not bloodshed. "You are strange," she said at last, a small, reluctant laugh escaping her. It sounded like music to ears. "You do not behave like the others, you do not hate me, and yet you are still human." "Yes," he said, "and I cannot change what I am, but maybe you can see that I am more than what your people tell you." She studied him for a long moment, then shook her head. "I should kill you," she said. "I should end this, but I cannot. Something about you makes me hesitate." His chest tightened. He did not move, not wanting to push her, not wanting to make her feel trapped. But inside, a small hope grew, a fragile flame. That night, as she walked away to the far side of the cave to watch the crystals glow, realized something astonishing. The princess who had sworn to hate all humans was softening, ever so slightly, because of him. A small crack had formed in her armor, both literal and emotional. And somehow, in that shared silence, they understood one truth. The war between them might be long, but the war in her heart had already begun to shift. For the first time, the human and the princess were no longer just enemies. They were two souls meeting in the shadow of hatred, beginning a connection neither fully understood, but both deeply felt. And in that quiet cave, a fragile bond was born. The wind howled outside the cave, carrying with it a storm the likes of which neither nor Lyra had ever faced. Rain pounded the rocky ground, rattling the fragile crystal walls and sending small shards of light dancing across the cave. The storm was violent, unforgiving, and it trapped them together in its icy embrace. Could feel the damp chill creeping under his clothes, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on Lyra, who stood near the cave entrance, her silver hair plastered against her armored skin, her body tense and alert. Lightning struck close to the cave's mouth, illuminating the jagged rocks and the roaring river forming outside. The water surged and rocks loosened. Lyra's sharp instincts told her the cave might not hold for long. "We need to move further in," she shouted, her voice cutting through the storm, but the next moment a piece of the ceiling gave way. Didn't think, he leapt forward, pushing Lyra out of the path of falling stone. Sharp fragments hit his back, cutting through his clothes and leaving stinging bruises. He grunted in pain, teeth clenched, but he held her steady. The princess stared at him in disbelief, her silver eyes wide with shock. Why?" she started, but words failed her. "I couldn't let you get hurt," he said between gritted teeth. Pain shot through his back, but he barely felt it. The storm, the cave, even the danger, the only thing that mattered was that she was safe. For the first time, Lyra felt fear, not for herself, but for the human in front of her. Her heart beat rapidly, confused and anxious. She had never relied on a human, never allowed one to risk themselves for her. The concept felt foreign, yet her chest ached with an unfamiliar warmth. She reached out, almost instinctively, to help him up, brushing rain-soaked hair from his face. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the calm mask she always wore. "You are reckless," she said, trying to sound angry, but the words came out softer, almost tender. "I couldn't leave you," he replied simply. No bravado, no fear, just honesty. For a long, suspended moment, they stared at each other. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, time seemed to slow. His chest heaved from the pain and exertion, and Lyra's heart thudded in a rhythm that felt foreign and electric. She hated humans. She had trained herself to despise their very existence, and yet here he was, risking everything for her. A human, flawed, fragile, and mortal, yet undeniably noble. The storm worsened, and the cave shuddered again. They moved deeper inside, finding a small ledge safe from the collapsing rocks. Slumped against the wall, wincing with every movement. Lyra knelt beside him, inspecting the cuts on his back. Her touch was light, careful, and he winced under the pain, but he didn't pull away. "You should not have done that," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "You could have died." "I would rather die protecting you than survive and see you hurt," he said softly. Her silver eyes filled with emotion she could not name. Anger, gratitude, something more fragile, more dangerous. She clenched her fists inside her gloves, her knuckles white under the crystal armor. Every instinct told her to push him away, to remember who he was, a human. But another part of her, a part she thought she had buried long ago, urged her to stay close, to trust him, to feel. They sat there in silence as the storm roared around them, shifted slightly, offering a dry cloth he had torn from his jacket. Lyra hesitated, then took it, brushing the damp rain from his wounds. Their fingers brushed, and in that fleeting touch, a current passed between them, a connection neither wanted to name, yet but both felt deeply. Why do you care for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because you are more than the war," he answered simply. "You are human in a way I didn't expect, strong, brave, and kind. Even if you hate me, I see who you really are." She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Her hatred, her sorrow, her years of anger, all of it seemed to soften slightly, melting under his words, under his actions. For the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to hope that not everything about humans was destruction, that maybe, just maybe, there could be something more. Hours passed. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind the scent of wet stone and earth. Leaned against the wall, exhausted, but he kept his gaze on her. Lyra, still kneeling beside him, felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest, a mix of awe, fear, and something tender. She did not understand it yet, and she did not want to, but the seed was planted, and it would grow. That night they did not speak much. The silence was enough. The shared danger, the trust forged in the storm, and the gentle understanding between two enemies-turned-strangers created a fragile bond that neither would forget. Outside, the world was still at war. Inside, in a small cave lit by faint crystals, two souls had begun to find each other. And in that quiet, fragile peace, both and Lyra realized something powerful. Sometimes trust and care can grow even in the hearts of enemies, and sometimes the smallest acts of courage can change the course of everything. The storm had passed, but its mark remained. Muddy water pooled across the rocky terrain, and fallen branches blocked the paths they needed to take. Lyra stepped carefully through the forest, moving away from the unstable cave and deeper into the alien wilderness. Every sound, the rustling of leaves, the snap of twigs underfoot, the distant cries of unknown creatures, kept Lyra alert. She had survived countless battles, yet something about the dense, unfamiliar forest made her senses sharper, more alive. Followed her closely, limping slightly from the injuries the storm had caused. He leaned on a long stick he had found, using it like a staff to keep balance through the slippery ground. He was careful, quiet, trying not to slow her down. But Lyra, noticing his pain, glanced back more than once. Each time she felt a flicker of concern, something she hadn't expected to feel for a human before. "You should rest," she said finally, her voice soft but commanding. "You are not used to this terrain." "I can keep going," replied, trying to hide the wince of pain in his leg. "I need to make sure you are safe." Lyra paused, staring at him. His dedication irritated her in the most confusing way. He was human, fragile, weak compared to her species. And yet he was protecting her, not with weapons or aggression, but with his own body, his own willingness to endure. They moved in silence for hours, the forest thickening around them. Lyra showed him how to identify safe plants for water and food. "That one is poisonous," she said, pointing to a bright blue leaf. "If you touch it, the toxins enter your skin." Nodded carefully, memorizing her instructions. Then he showed her how to create a small fire without the advanced technology they were used to. She watched, fascinated, and allowed herself a brief, secret smile when the small flames sparked to life. Sometimes they walked side by side in quiet companionship. Sometimes their hands brushed by accident, sending a strange electricity through them both. Neither spoke about it, but the unspoken connection grew stronger with each step. Lyra hated to admit it, but she was beginning to enjoy his company. His calm, gentle nature contrasted sharply with the war-hardened world she had lived in for so long. As night approached, they reached a small clearing by a shimmering river. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting soft silver light over the forest floor. Lyra knelt down to Czech's leg, brushing mud from his wound. "You always help me," she said softly, almost to herself. "Because you helped me first," he replied, his voice quiet. "You didn't kill me when you could have. You saw something in me, and I am seeing something in you." Her chest tightened. Those words, so simple and honest, made her heart ache in ways she did not expect. She had spent years building walls around herself, walls of hatred and revenge. And now that wall was crumbling brick by brick because of this human who had no reason to care about her at all. They settled near the river and carefully tended to a small fire. Lyra watched him, feeling a strange sense of peace she had not felt since childhood. She wanted to speak, to say something that could explain the storm of emotions inside her, but she could not. Instead, she simply stayed close, letting her presence speak for her. "You are strange," she said finally, a small, reluctant smile on her lips. "You do not act like other humans. You do not lie, cheat, or kill without reason. You are different." "I am human," he said, softly but firmly. "And yet you see more than what is in front of you. You see my choices, not just my species." She looked away, blinking rapidly, trying to hide the blush rising on her cheeks. Her heart was softening in ways she did not understand, in ways that scared her more than battle ever had. That night they slept near the fire, taking turns keeping watch. The forest was alive with strange sounds, but they both felt safer knowing the other was there. His presence, once a symbol of fear and hatred, had become a source of comfort for Lyra. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for something more. As dawn approached, the first rays of light filtered through the dense trees. Lyra glanced at, and he caught her gaze. They shared a small, quiet smile, both understanding without words that this journey, though dangerous, was slowly changing them. The war outside still raged, but in the quiet forest, two enemies were learning the most difficult lesson of all, that trust, care, and even love could exist where hatred once ruled. And in that soft morning light, Lyra realized something terrifying and wonderful. Her heart, once frozen by grief and hate, was beginning to thaw. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. And Lyra moved cautiously along the narrow path, their senses alert. The storm had passed, but it had left danger in its wake. Fallen branches and twisted roots made every step uncertain, and the shadows of the trees seemed to hide unseen eyes. Lyra's instincts, honed from years of battle, screamed that they were not alone. She paused, crouching low, and signaled to do the same. His heart raced, but he trusted her completely. For all his courage, he knew she was the one who could read the forest, sense threats, and keep them alive. "They're here," she whispered, her silver eyes scanning the dark. "Hunters, my own people. They don't know I'm with a human, and they will not stop until they kill him." His chest tightened. He had known danger followed them, but hearing her say it made it real. "What do we do?" he asked softly. "You stay behind me. Do exactly as I say." Minutes later, 3 warriors emerged from the shadows, their armor glinting in the dappled sunlight. Their eyes locked onto immediately, and without hesitation they drew their weapons. "Human," one shouted, "step aside or die." Lyra stepped forward, her posture rigid and commanding. "He is with me," she said, her voice echoing through the trees. The warriors hesitated. "He is human," another said. "You cannot protect him." "I will protect him," Lyra shouted, her silver eyes blazing. "If you harm him, you harm me." The words were sharp, unyielding, filled with authority. The warriors, surprised by her defiance, advanced anyway. Lyra moved like a storm unleashed, her crystal armor gleaming, her every motion precise and deadly. She fought with the strength and skill that had earned her the title of princess, deflecting blows, disarming opponents, and shielding behind her whenever possible. Wanted to help, but he knew he could not match the warrior's speed or strength. Instead, he searched the ground, grabbing a fallen branch and swinging it defensively, buying her precious seconds. His heart pounded with fear and adrenaline. Every moment Lyra fought, he felt both awe and a growing connection, a bond formed not just through survival, but through trust and care. One of the hunters struck a glancing blow at Lyra, and she stumbled, reacted without thinking, diving in front of her and raising the branch just in time. The force of the strike knocked him back, pain shooting through his shoulder, but he remained standing. "You fool," Lyra shouted, panic and anger mixing in her voice. "I couldn't let them hurt you," he cried, gritting his teeth against the pain. Her heart twisted in a way she did not understand. This human, weak, fragile, yet brave, was risking everything for her. She had spent years hatting humans, thinking they were selfish and cruel. And yet here he was, fighting and bleeding for her while she had only ever protected her own. The battle continued, and finally the hunters, wounded and confused, retreated into the forest. Lyra dropped to her knees, breathing heavily, her silver eyes softening as she looked at. You saved yourself and me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why do you care so much?" Winced as he straightened, bloodied and aching, but he smiled faintly. "Because your life matters," he said simply. She shook her head, unable to comprehend the warmth and honesty in his words. Her heart, long hardened by grief and hate, felt something unfamiliar, something fragile and dangerous. She reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from his forehead. Her touch lingered longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement that she cared more than she would admit. For the first time, she realized that humans were not only capable of destruction, but also of courage, compassion, and loyalty. Actions had broken through the walls she had built around herself, showing her that not all humans were the same, and perhaps that not all enemies were destined to remain enemies forever. As they settled near a small stream to clean their wounds, Lyra watched him carefully. She wanted to say something, to explain the storm of emotions inside her, but the words failed. Instead, she simply stayed close, sharing the quiet of the forest with him. The hunters might return, the war might rage on, but in that moment they had each other. And that fragile connection, forged in the midst of danger and trust, felt like the beginning of something neither of them could ignore. For the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for something more. Something beyond hatred, beyond war, something human and real. The forest finally began to thin as Lyra approached the border of territory. The trees grew smaller, the underbrush lighter, and in the distance, the faint hum of settlements reached their ears. Every step forward made Lyra tense, her silver eyes scanning for danger, not from the forest, but from her own people. They would not forgive her for bringing a human this far. Limped beside her, his arm brushing against hers. Despite the bruises and cuts from the storm and the hunters, his spirit had not wavered. Lyra could not deny the growing admiration she felt for him. He had risked his life repeatedly, not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of genuine care. That realization made her chest tighten in ways she had not felt for years. "Do you think your people will accept me?" asked quietly, his eyes cautious. She shook her head, keeping her gaze forward. "No, they would never allow it. You are human, and you are mine to protect." Her voice softened, almost unwillingly. "I cannot let anything happen to you." They moved cautiously, watching for guards and patrols. Finally, they reached a small clearing, and beyond it, the gates of the capital shimmered in the morning light. The guards' eyes immediately fell on, and their hands went to their weapons. Lyra stepped in front of him, her body tense and commanding. "He is with me," she said, her voice steady despite the fear twisting inside her. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. "Princess," one said, "you cannot bring a human here. It is forbidden. You know the law." "I know the law," Lyra replied, her voice unwavering. "But I do not care. If you harm him, you harm me." The guards hesitated, startled by the ferocity in her words. They had never seen the princess act like this, protective, defiant, unwilling to obey the rigid laws of their people. Looked at her, his chest swelling with admiration and awe. "Lyra," he began, but she placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. "I have something to say," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Something I never thought I would admit." She took a deep breath, her silver eyes locking onto his. "I hated humans, I despised them. I believed every one of them was dangerous, cruel, and unworthy. But you changed that. You saved me not once, but twice. You risked your life for mine, and somehow I cannot hate you. I do not want to." His eyes softened. "Lyra, I didn't do any of it to change your heart. I did it because you mattered, because your life mattered, because I care about you." Her chest tightened. Those simple words, filled with honesty and warmth, stirred something deep inside her. She wanted to speak, to explain the storm of emotions twisting inside her heart, but the words failed her. Instead, she simply let him see her, let him know the truth without saying it aloud. As if sensing the fragile moment, the gates of the city opened, and her father, the war leader, arrived with his guards. He stopped, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of his daughter standing before a human. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his voice like thunder. Lyra stepped forward, holding his hand firmly. "He is not our enemy," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her chest. "He is proof that peace is possible. He is proof that humans are capable of more than war and destruction." Her father's eyes bore into, then back to Lyra. For a long moment, silence hung between them, heavy and tense. Squeezed Lyra's hand gently, offering her courage without words. Finally, the war leader spoke. "Then let peace begin here," he said, his tone cautious but firm. The guards lowered their weapons, and a stunned calm spread across the clearing. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly, the tension leaving her body in a wave of relief. She looked at, her silver eyes soft and vulnerable for the first time. "You changed my heart," she whispered, her voice trembling, "and maybe you changed our future." Smiled, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "We changed it together," he said. For the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to hope, not just for herself, but for her people. Not just for survival, but for something greater. Something beyond hatred, beyond war. They stood there hand in hand as the capital began to stir around them. Outside, the world was still at war and danger still lingered. But inside that small, quiet moment, two hearts had found each other. And in that connection, fragile yet strong, lay the promise of something new, something human, something real, something worth fighting for. For Lyra, the princess who once detested humans, and for the human who risked everything, the war might continue. But their hearts had already begun a battle that no blade, no law, and no hatred could ever destroy. And that battle had already been won.